Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone podcast. My name is Kathy. This is part 2 of an ongoing series looking back at the Affidavit of Probable Cause 3 years later. We begin at the bottom of page number 1, where it states Chapin was also unalived, with wounds later determined, and then there's a sentence in parentheses that goes on to page number 2, describing that there was an autopsy report dated December 15th, 2022, and giving a brief summary of what the injuries appeared to be. For some reason, the county medical examiner, a public figure, name is completely redacted here, no initials, nothing. We go into paragraph 2, we're going to see something that appears to be inconsistent, because here Detective Payne identifies a civilian by his first and last name. It says here, I then followed Officer Smith upstairs to the 3rd floor of the residence. The 3rd floor consisted of 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The bedroom on the west side of the floor was later determined to be Kaylee's room. I later learned, and in parentheses, from review of Officer Nunez's body camera, end of parentheses, there was a dog in the room when Moscow Police Department initially responded. The dog belonged to Kaylee and her ex-boyfriend, and this is where his full name is published. I'm only going to refer to his initials here. JD. I found out from my interview with, again, JD on November 13th, 2022, that he and Kaylee shared the dog. Officer Smith then pointed out a small bathroom on the east side of the 3rd floor. This bathroom shared a wall with Madison, hereinafter the Mogan bedroom, which was situated on the southeast corner of the 3rd floor. Next paragraph begins. As I entered this bedroom, I could see 2 females in the single bed in the room. Both Kaylee and Madison were unalived, and he describes what he visually saw in terms of injuries. He then continues, I also later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather sheath laying on the bed next to Madison's right side, in parentheses, when viewed from the door, end of parentheses. The sheath was later processed and had K-Bar, USMC, and the United States Marine Corps Eagle Globe and Anchor insignia stamped on the outside of it. The Idaho State Lab later located a single source of male DNA, parentheses, suspect profile, end of parentheses, left on the button snap of the sheath. Final paragraph reads, as part of the investigation, numerous interviews were conducted by Moscow Police Department officers, Idaho State Police detectives, and Fed agents. 2 of the interviews included BF and DM. Both BF and DM were inside the King Road residence at the time of the unalivings and were roommates to the victims. BF's bedroom was located on the east side of the 1st floor of the King Road residence. And this brings us to the end of page 2. If I could make a few observations here. Paragraph 2. Detective Payne, unlike other people identified in this Affidavit of Probable Cause, disclosed JD's full first and last name. Now, think of the time that this PCA was written and published. It was written December 29th, 2022, and it was published to the public several days thereafter when Mr. Kohberger returned to Idaho beginning of January. At that time, there was enormous scrutiny on this case because, in my opinion, so much had been held back from the Moscow Police Department. They released very little information. So for them to publish his first and last name here twice at the beginning of the PCA, when he refers to others with initials or redacts their names, as he did with the medical examiner, I asked the rhetorical question, why this inconsistency with respect to names published in the Affidavit of Probable Cause. Secondly, where he addresses the fact that when he looked into a review of Officer Nunez's body camera to see Murphy there, Officer Nunez was the very first responding officers to 1122 King Road based on documentation that's been released to the public. What is not said here is that Sergeant Gunderson ordered that Murphy be removed from the crime scene rather than perhaps closing the door and keeping him there in the room where he had been found in, where he had food, where there was a crate, where there was water, where there was a balcony he could go out to, for example, give the Idaho State Police an opportunity to perhaps see if there was any evidence on his coat or his paws. He also does not state here that Murphy was taken to a shelter, a humane society, and that another officer by the name of Nathaniel Rosenthal, according to his report, was dispatched to go to the humane society to turn over Murphy to JD. No body cam during that transaction, where other law enforcement officials, especially this early in the investigation, might have looked at an X as a potential person of interest. Not saying that JD had anything at all to do with this crime. As a matter of fact, I question why his name was published twice by Detective Payne, but still, that's what law enforcement typically does, in my opinion. Also, in the report of Officer Rosenthal, where he describes this transaction, no body cam on, his report was reviewed and approved by Sergeant Gunderson. Continuing on with some comments, some speculation, some opinion here, this sheath will be immensely important in this case. According to Detective Payne, it was found on the right side of Madison when seen from the door. And he's saying that Officer Smith accompanied him through 1122 King Road. However, as we mentioned in our last episode of our look back at the PCA, Officer Smith's report of November 13th, which he began writing at approximately 4:04 p.m., ending at 4:17 p.m., on the 13th of November, Officer Smith, number one, does not mention Detective Payne at all, although he does mention other colleagues from Moscow Police Department, and he doesn't mention taking Detective Payne through the house, as Detective Payne states here at page 2 of this Affidavit of Probable Cause. And then finally, what I'd like to mention is that within the last several hours, a content creator by the name of Connor on YouTube released some body cam footage that was, to my knowledge, not released to the public before. Officer Smith's body cam footage, and it appears to show him going off duty, consistent with his writing of a report at 4:04 p.m. after his shift was ended. Why would law enforcement official write a report in the middle of his shift? You can see him minutes before 3:30 talking with Officer Warner in the kitchen of the crime scene, turning over a log of who apparently was coming in and out of the back residence to Officer Warner that had been maintained by Officer Smith, then walking through the crime scene yet again, going down the steps, going to the doorway and just outside of the front door, and speaking with an officer there as if he were going off shift, talking about his patrol car possibly might have been used by another member of the MPD. So these are all rhetorical questions that we are asking with the benefit of information we did not have before when we first look at the Affidavit of Probable Cause. Please join us next time where we will pick up at page number 3 of our looking back at the Affidavit of Probable Cause 3 years later. This is Kathy. Thank you for joining us here today.